Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kristen. I'm the maker behind this little corner of the internet, Do So Knits, where I share with you how knitting and other fiber crafts have woven into my life. I'm a knitter living in Denver, Colorado with my husband and our two animals, Sherlock and Ebony, and today is episode 81 of my podcast where I share with you works in progress and finished objects that I've been working on over the last couple weeks, and I'm excited about the projects that I have to share with you today. I think I say that every episode, but I've got my knitting mojo has come back. I'm excited to sit here and chat with you today, so I hope you have something to work on. I hope you have something to drink, and we'll just dive right into the works in progress and finished objects today. So my first finished object today is something that has been a work in progress for honestly not that long. I'm surprised I honestly got done with it this quickly, but I'm so excited that it's done and that I can share it today and then hopefully begin using it. So this finished object is based off of the Linen Square Temperature Blanket by Toni Lipsey, and then a little bit inspired by the Battenberg blanket as well. And this is my giant square blanket that I made using my 2021 Nora George Advent colors. And I've finished this blanket. I'll definitely get some B-roll to show kind of everything that's going on here, because obviously a blanket is really hard to show, but it used 24 different contrasting colors where I did this linen stitch, which is the Toni Lipsey Temperature Linen Square. I used her tutorial to make these, but I just did them solid. I used fingering weight and I held it double to get a DK weight. Overall I used an H hook, and I crocheted each of these with the 20-gram minis until I had 14 stitches, like clusters on each side of the squares. So they became 14 by 14 single crochet cluster squares. And then after I did all 24 of my contrast colors, I also did 24 main color. It's kind of hard to decide, so I did 24 colors in my Advent, and then I did a solid square. And this was with Cascade Heritage, which is also a fingering weight yarn. They're both superwash merino and nylon blends, but this one was a solid, and I did the same thing where I did the linen stitch clusters, 14 stitches on each side. But then for the final round, I did a join as you go. And what I did is I followed the similar join as you go kind of method that's laid out in the Battenberg blanket, where you kind of join your squares clockwise. And I just did a slip stitch join, so you can kind of see the joins on the back here. Let me see if I can find one with more. So there is a slight ridge as I slip stitch all of these around, but even looking at it from the back, this is the back, I still think that slip stitch join looks pretty clean. And then the front, you don't really see any joins at all. So then last time I was mentioning I was pretty close to finishing joining all my squares, so then I was debating what I was going to do for a border. And what I opted to do, I got some great recommendations, was like looking at some of Attic 24's blankets, and I just went through a couple blankets in Ravelry as well and just stitch patterns. And I just wanted something super simple, so I ended up not following a pattern because most borders on blankets seem to be pretty like lacy or more intricate. All I ended up doing, and I'll share it with you on a square that's not the same color, I just used that same Cascade 220. I did a half double crochet round and then a single crochet round. I probably would have opted to do 2 half double crochet rounds. However, I had finished that first round, and then looking at the amount of yardage that I had left, I did not think I'd be able to do another half double crochet round, so that's why I opted to do a single crochet round afterwards. So I'm going to stand up really quickly. I'm going to show you this blanket. So as you can see, it is 3 contrasting colors wide and then 3 of the heritage, so it's 6 wide, and then it's 4 Advent colors long with 4 of the contrasting colors as well. So overall it makes a pretty generously sized blanket. When I hold it when I'm standing up, it definitely touches the ground. It's a good one-person size blanket, and I'm so excited about it. So this blanket is pretty, it's pretty heavy. It's like a nice weight because it is all DK essentially. It's got a nice weight to it. So I'm very excited to get this down on our couch, something able to be used. I've been putting it aside since I've washed it because I wanted it to look really nice for the podcast and so I can get some finished object photos. Blankets are always really hard to get photos of. So I haven't done that yet, but I'm so excited this is done. And I've had that Advent in my stash obviously since 2021. It is 2025 now, so that's roughly not quite 4 years because December would be 4 years, but 3.5 for sure. So I'm glad to have found a project that inspired me to use this up. It was a fade kind of Advent, so I really wanted something that was going to show off the fading of the colors, and so I'm really happy with this blanket, and I really wanted something that would showcase each individual color, which is why I wanted to do something like a granny square type design. Overall, I used about the 480 grams for the Advent colors. I think it was a little bit less because I didn't use completely 20 grams of each skein, but it was pretty close overall. And then for the Cascade Heritage, I only had 19 grams left over. I ordered 6 skeins, so 600 grams total, and used about 581 grams, and that was to make all 24 squares, plus joining and then doing the border. So I did use roughly about 100 grams more of the contrasting color, or my main color, compared to the Advents, and I think a lot of that is due to slip stitching each join. That was going to use more yarn, and then obviously the border uses some extra as well. But overall, I'm so happy with this blanket. I started it around July 6th, and I didn't exactly remember to write down the date that I finished it, but I believe I finished it anywhere between August 6th to August 10th. So it was really only on my hook for about a month. I just really enjoyed making these squares during the summer. I think it was something that I wanted, like a quick, satisfying, I could do a square, finish it, feel like I accomplished something, but also it wasn't like super heavy on my lap because I was only making one square at a time, and then the only time like the entire blanket kind of was on my lap was really at the end when I was getting close to joining all the final squares and when I was doing the border. But even the border, I kind of just like set it on the couch beside me. I kind of propped it up onto a pillow to do it, but I'm so excited. I can like lay this on my lap right now and it completely covers my toes and it comes all the way up to my chest with it hanging over the side. So I think this will be a great lap sofa blanket for one person. I'm 5'5", so obviously anyone that's a little taller, I think it could still work as a lap blanket, maybe just a little less up on your chest. But I'm so excited. My squares are definitely not perfectly square, and the edges are still not perfectly straight. I was hoping that some of the border would hide some of that, and I think it does a little bit. However, my tension changed as I did this project. Some of my squares were bigger, some were smaller. I didn't block my squares to like all the same size before joining. I know if I would have, that probably would have evened them out a little bit. But since this was kind of just like a stash buster, scrap buster, I really didn't care. And when you're using it, you're never gonna like line up the edges and be like, that edge isn't perfectly straight. Why didn't you know, I'm not like an advanced crocheter. It was my first time doing this stitch. Even my squares weren't completely square doing them. Anyway, I love this blanket, even with its imperfections. I would make this again. I would do this again. It was a great time. Great time. I would, yes. This is my Advent blanket. My linen stitch Advent blanket. I love it, love it, love it. And that is my first finished object. This one is also really nice when it comes to my stash in and out goals for this year. I haven't talked about them much, but my goal this year is to use more stash than what I bring in, with an ultimate goal of kind of using roughly 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 times more out than what I bring in. I'm tracking that with both skein numbers and grams. And so this blanket, even though I did buy 600 grams and 6 skeins to finish it, I did get out over 1,000 grams in totality of this blanket. So that's pretty exciting when it comes to like looking at my year-to-date stats. So that's my first finished object, and we'll just move right into my second one. This is a Lyle Cap by Nancy Ekval. I had started this July 20th and I finished it on August 17th, which is today, the day I'm filming. And I have not blocked this hat yet, but this is what it looks like. So this hat is a very simple, basic kind of stockinette hat. I use this as part of my summer gifts knit along that I am hosting. If you want any more information, you can check out the links below. I have another video talking about it, but essentially we're just making some gifts this summer. And so for this hat, I went stash diving again, and I used 2 different scraps. I used Fru Valberg Merino Swirl in the colorway Caramel, which was this color. And then I used Merino Nylon from Stranded Dye Works, and this was a color 2 in a fade kit. And so I held these 2 together to get this. I think the colors marled so gorgeous together. I think it's such a beautiful, like toffee golden hat. The little speckles come through really beautifully. So overall, it's really just like a simple 1x1 twisted rib, then you knit stockinette, and then do some rapid decreases at the end. Simple, simple hat. I used US 7s with my Knit Picks Mosaic 16-inch needles. And overall, yardage wise, I used 36.5 grams of each of these colors. So again, it was 2 fingering weights held together to get a DK. 36.5 grams of each, roughly 73 grams total for this hat. So this is a really good stash buster because you need less than 50 grams left over, and you can get a nice hat if you're holding 2 colors, so 36 each. So I'd say if you have roughly 40 grams, you can knock out one of these hats. And yeah, I'm planning to I'm kind of just gathering everything into like a gift kind of bin. I am not making them specifically for anyone. This was a great project that I had. Since it was just stockinette, I had this in the car for riding, knitting, just if I had any meetings. I did start a new pair of socks, which I'll show you in a little bit. So this kind of became mostly like car knitting. My socks kind of became meeting knitting, but it was just nice to have something simple to work on. That's the crown decreases. It's really a rapid decrease, so you kind of get this more like bunched effect. But for a really simple hat, it works nicely. I have kind of a smaller head, so it's got a little bit of a slouch. I definitely could have kept knitting if I wanted more of a slouch. And both of these are superwash yarn, so I still need to block it, and it might grow just a smidge after blocking. But otherwise, it'll just go in my gift bin. It wasn't aiming to be made for anyone specifically. So when someone likes it, it will become their home, or it will go home with them. And so that's my second finished object. Really simple hat. Knit it with my, like I said, for my summertime gifts knit along. There's a bingo board. This project won't specifically mark off any new bingo squares for me, but if I make another one, that could mark off like making multiple of one hat pattern or of a pattern in general. And that's why it's in this Stolen Minutes Christmas Cats bag. Since they're kind of going to be Christmas gifts, I thought it's kind of fun to use kind of a holiday themed bag. And those are the only finished objects I have. I've really kind of narrowed down the number of projects I have going at one time. So I think this might be like a normal number of finished objects that we see. I feel like I'm kind of at a manageable number, but then my cast-on-itis is rearing up a little bit. I have some inspiration and things that are inspiring me, but I have some other projects that are getting close to finishing, so we'll just go ahead and move right into my works in progress so I can share with you what's currently on my needles and yeah, talk about what I'm working on. So I figured the first thing we could talk about is that sock project that I said I started. And these are just some shorty socks that I've cast on for myself, kind of using a hodgepodge of patterns to get my vanilla sock pattern. And so here is my first sock. And so this is using yarn from Woolens and Nosh. This is the colorway Mine, aka a gull mix off with a blueberry. It's got these really gorgeous larger stripes. And so for these, what I did is I did 10 rounds of a 2x1 ribbing, and then I did 8 rounds for my leg. I then wanted to do a short row heel, so I did a shadow wrap heel, but in order to add a little more gusset area, I did 4 rounds of flat knitting as like a mini little gusset. I've gotten that from like the Mina's vanilla sock pattern. I talked about that pattern a lot when I first started my podcast 5 years ago. But it's just a mini heel flap gusset that you can kind of do some flat knitting, and then you pick up the stitches kind of like you do with a normal heel flap, and then you decrease out those extra stitches after your short row heel. So I did that with these. So I had started this first sock and I was working on it, and I had roughly about an inch left to go on these before I was ready to start the toe. And we had a big staff meeting at work, so I wanted to have another pair of socks kind of ready for that in the round knitting. And I know an inch of sock knitting could potentially not last me that entire time. So I did cast on the second sock. And so again, 2x1 ribbing, same thing with the heel and gusset. And then I decreased out those extra stitches. So now this sock is ready for just foot knitting. You can see that I did not match these stripes. And the reason was because when I started these, I usually try to match where the striping starts. So I started this one first. And the first color I had on this one was the blue. And you can see blue is the second color here. So in order for me to have started with the gray, I would have had to rip out the blue, yellow, blue, and red. So basically an entire sequence of colors in order to start this at the same color. And yardage wise, I definitely would have had enough. I have quite small feet. I usually wear like a US women's 7, maybe 6.5, depending. So I always have leftover yardage. However, I just didn't care. I was working on these in a car, and I basically just got to the white and I figured it'll be fine. That top blue matches enough and it will be good enough. And that'll kind of save enough yardage. If I ever want to make something else, I'll have plenty. And so I also decided to not do the contrasting color here as the entire heel flap or heel. I could have, but you can see I just continued using this. And so that's why there's no white stripe between these two colors on the front, because I used the yarn through here and then rejoined in the round. And I think it looks cute. And this one has a mirrored effect, so this one has like the two blue stripes touching. So these will be shorty socks for me. I'm still fine-tuning the exact height that I like with a short row heel, so that was another reason I wanted to try this. I do really love knitting short row heels. They're so fast. And sometimes I just don't want to do a heel flap and gusset. So I wanted to try this out a little bit more, play around with that heel height, see how I like it. And you know, I can always come back and knit another pair and shorten it up a little bit if it's a little too tall. But I know I will love these. I think these colors are such a nice, fun summer color. I know I'll definitely have enough left over that I'll probably make a pair for Shane as well. I think these are fun colors that he would enjoy. And Shane is my husband, and if I do shorty socks, I should have plenty. However, the summer vibes are slowly dwindling, even though the summer heat is still here. Yesterday we went to a water park, and if you can tell, I'm a little sunburnt, and it's like 95 degrees today. So I probably still could bust out another pair of summer shorty socks before I really start diving into all the fall knits. And this is one of my favorite bags. This is a Mountain State Stitches project bag. So yeah, those are mine socks that I'm calling them, with my wool and ganache. I love this base. It's so fun to work on, and I do love how quickly socks knit up. I forget that one pair of socks I took for a lunch, and I was like, wow, I'm basically ready, almost ready for my toe. I have really small feet though, so there is that. So now we'll move on to the garments that I have on the needles. I have 3 garments that I plan to show you today, and 2 of them you've seen before, 1 you haven't seen in a while. But the first one you have seen recently, and this is my Tolsta Tee by Rebecca Clow. I have been knitting this since May 28th, so it's been on my needles for a while, but I have made great progress since I last recorded. And so this is what it looks like. So this little sheep from Denim and Rain is where I was last time. And so you can see I've added a few inches onto the body, but also I have gone back and added my ribbing at my collar. I also picked up and knit my sleeves and finished them as well on both of them. I just was ready and I got excited and I just went and I picked those up. And then I tried it on, and I'm so close to finishing this for the body. We actually went to a movie today. We went to see Bad Guys 2. It's like a kids animated movie. It was very cute. But before the movie, I was about 3 inches from where I want to end this sweater. So I had roughly about 2 inches of stockinette to go, and then 1 inch of ribbing. And this little marker here, this one's from Simply Serving, which is no longer making markers, but it's a little mushroom. And I knit this much. And I've only eyeballed it, but I think that's roughly 2 inches. And so what I was thinking we could do today is I'm going to pop this on some try-it-on tubing and do a quick little try-on, because I think I'm pretty close to getting to where I might be able to start the ribbing. So I figure, let me get this on try-it-on tubing. So in case you don't know, try-it-on tubing is just this plastic kind of tubing with a hollow center. And you just pop that hollow tube kind of on the end of your needle. I suggest really squishing it on there. If you don't, they do tend to pop off. I've also had some of mine, sometimes they get a little cracked at the end, and if that ever happens, just trim off that little crack, and then don't cut off a ton, but you can always just cut off that little crack, and then you'll have a nice uncracked edge to kind of work on. And so once you put those on, you just kind of put it on like that, and then you can just gently slide your stitches off your needles and onto the tubing. When you're going onto the tubing, go very gently, because it can, if you like push too hard, you can pop that tubing off your needle, and then you have to play kind of pickup. I find it a little easier getting the stitches off the tubing onto your needles because you're not going like over a bump versus kind of like sliding. You're just like, instead of going like up a step, you're kind of going down a step. So it's a little easier. But I figure while I slide these on, I can tell you a little more about the project. So I started this, like I mentioned, May 28th. This is my second Tolsta Tee that I've made. It's a DK weight raglan sweater, t-shirt kind of. There is a long sleeve adjustment as well. The designer also has gone back and added options for bust darts, so those are in the pattern now as well. And so I am doing size 5, which is roughly going to be a 49-inch finished bust circumference, and then I am doing D-cup bust darts. And those are incorporated into the raglan increases, and so they're essentially vertical bust darts in this pattern and not short row bust darts. I do plan to do a bust dart how-to, kind of the math video here sometime in the future, so be on the lookout for that. If you have any like specific bust dart questions, let me know. I've kind of done them in a lot of different ways and a lot of different patterns, and I still feel like it's hard to find a resource that explains how to do the math if you want to do the math yourself. And so I've like kind of figured out how to do the math based on a lot of reading. So I'm thinking I'm going to do a video to kind of compile everything that I've learned into one resource, and that way other people, if they want to do the math themselves, they can. Because it is hard to find patterns that incorporate this all the time. And I have a large bust difference. So my upper bust is about a 41 to 42, with my full bust being about a 48. So that's about a 6-inch difference. And most patterns are written with a 2-inch difference between those two measurements, so that's why I include bust darts. And yeah, I'm knitting this in Knit Picks Cotton, which is a DK weight cotton and linen blend yarn, and I've gotten it all onto the try-it-on tubing. So I will stand up here shortly and try it on, and I will show you how it's looking. So yeah, as you can see, I have finished the collar here along with the sleeves. And so today I'm wearing some of my high-waisted linen pants. And so this is where it's sitting. This is kind of where I was before the movie and how much I knit. This is where I was last time. And so right now it's sitting kind of just past where the top of my waistband is. And I like more of this little cropped length. I think it looks really nice on me. I did tuck in the tank top that I have on. And when I like compare it to, like when I have the tank top all the way down, I don't love this length as much, but when I roll it up just a smidge, that's about that extra inch that I'm thinking I'd like. So this is kind of a way that I kind of like judge like how much length do I want to add, as I can use like another shirt here, see where that hits, because it's really hard for me to like envision what an extra inch would look like. So sometimes this extra little fabric can help, and like I like where that's hitting, and so that's where I think I'm gonna do 1 more inch of ribbing and then call it done. Obviously I would not wear this blue with these orange pants, although it doesn't look terrible, but you can let me know. I'm not great with colors. Like honestly this length is pretty cute, but I think I'll just do that 1 extra inch of ribbing, which I think is only 5 to 6, 8 rounds or so. Probably just match whatever I did up here at the top. And you can tell this is a wider neckline, like it's wider than like this tank top. So I wouldn't wear this tank top under it, although this tank top is kind of a slimmer cut. But it's kind of just a cute boxy shirt. This fabric has really nice drape. It's a really loose gauge. I think it's only like 17 stitches over the 4 inches, but I'm really excited. I think this will be a really wearable, lightweight kind of piece as we go into the fall. And I'm excited that I only have like 1 inch left. That means I can really wrap this up. And since it was, like, the sleeves are only like 4 rows of ribbing, and the collar was not very many, I feel like the bottom ribbing will go very quickly. So let me sit back down and we'll chat a little bit more. That is my Tolsta Tee so far, and this is the collar. The one thing I think about this pattern is the collar is a little wide, although it was a very easy pattern to cast on and start. So overall on the collar I did about 8 rounds. That's probably what I'll try to mimic at the bottom. I did do 6 rounds of normal 1x1 ribbing, and then I did 2 setup rows of my tubular bind off and then the sewn tubular bind off, and I did that on the sleeves as well, so that is a modification, and I will be doing that same thing on the bottom of this ribbing. So I'll probably do 6 rounds of 1x1 ribbing, 2 rounds of tubular setup, and then my bind off, and this will be done. So my overall length is going to be much shorter than the pattern, but I'm pretty short-waisted, so that is, sometimes that's kind of nice because I don't have to knit my garments as long. And I also don't like super full length. I kind of do a semi-crop. But I'll definitely, after I finish this, block it, I'll get a measurement of my full length here versus what the pattern recommended and kind of how that played out. Right now, I've only used, I still have 2 unused skeins overall of my Kotlin. So this is what it comes in. They're 123 yards for 50 grams. And this is the color weight Shoal. And these are the 2 skeins I've kind of tapped into at this point. I did start a new skein when I did the collar and the sleeves because I just didn't want to break the yarn that I was using in the round on the body. And yeah, this is my Tolsta Tee. This will definitely be done by the next time I see you. I think something I've learned from this project is I do like the looser gauge. It makes a nice fabric. Sometimes the raglans can stall me out because you get a lot of stitches. And also I think I need to either look at either modifying the neckline to be a little tighter next time, or look at other t-shirt patterns that have a little cleaner of a neckline. But overall, very happy with my second Tolsta. I wear my first one very often, and I think this blue will be a very wearable color. So I'm excited that this will be getting off the needles very soon. As I mentioned a little earlier, I started this on May 28th. It's currently August 17th, so that's, we're coming up on the 3-month mark, so that is quite a long time for a very loose knit, stuck knit pattern. This pattern has come many places with me. I've taken this project camping, I've taken it to 3 different movies now. I've had to start sections and rip out because of a knot. So it could have probably been finished a little sooner, but it hasn't been my like priority project. But I've loved having it on the needles for like these movies, and when we were camping, it was great to have something pretty mindless to work on. So that is my Tolsta Tee, and yeah, we'll move on to the next project because I don't have much else to say about that project right now. My next work in progress is something you have not seen, but is something that has brought me so much joy, and I'm so excited about it. So I was recently watching Marlene Knits, which is another knitting podcast. She's based in Germany, and so hearing her talk about Germany really makes me miss the time that when we were living there. So it's a really nice kind of like, I just really enjoy her podcast, and we have very similar styles. And so she was talking about making a started making the Iris Tee by Nora Gone, which is like a 3x3 ribbed tank top. And I was like, I'm going to make that. And then I thought about making it, and I was like, I just don't think a ribbed tank top is my style. Plus that ribbed tank top is kind of a little cropped. It's kind of almost like a bralette. It's a little between like a bralette and it's definitely a tighter tank top. I don't know. It just wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I knew I wanted to make a tank top in this specific yarn. And so the yarn that I'm talking about is it's Nerd String 4-ply in the colorway Seaside. I bought this in 2022 from Fancy Tiger Crafts. This is Nerd String, which is now Salty Blonde Fibers, but it's just this like gorgeous brown with these like most delicate like sea glass speckles. And I've had this yarn. I bought 3 skeins of it. They're 438 yards. So I had a little over 1,200, closer to 1,300 yards. And I had debated for a really long time if this brown was too close to my skin tone, maybe doing a vest and holding it with mohair, but I really wanted the speckles to shine through, but then back to the like, is it too close to my skin tone? And so I finally was like, I want to make a tank top with this yarn. And so I went just looking through Ravelry, and I've seen Amy Sher's patterns a lot, and I've heard great things about them and their sizing and the bust art options and everything. And they had this pattern, the Weekend Cami, which is this like V-neck fingering weight tank top that's a little more fitted at the top and then a little more ease as you get to like your belly and your waist. And I just saw it and I was like, it just looks like the perfect tank top that could be worn in the summer by itself or transition as we get into the cooler months, like under a button up or under a cardigan. And so I cast it on. I swatched the 2 different needle sizes, blocked it, did all the math. I hit gauge using the US 3, which is what's recommended in the pattern. It is a 26 stitch gauge over 4 inches. And like I said, I hit the gauge, so I cast on, and I have made so much progress on this. I've joined it in the round. I'm just trying to get all the strings organized here, and this is what it looks like. Ta-da! And like seeing this much done, it is definitely not the same color as my skin tone. I am so excited, and it's gorgeous. So the construction of this is pretty neat, but there's a lot of tiny pieces, and so I have a ton of strings hanging out on the inside of this right now. So you essentially, I don't remember if you start with the back or the fronts, but essentially what happens is you cast on at a shoulder strap and you knit down doing increases for the V-necks and armholes. And you do that with 2 back pieces, and then you do it again with 2 front pieces. There's a slightly different increase rate. You can see on the back here, the V-neck is a little more shallow versus the front is a deeper V-neck. But you do all that shaping with the armhole as well, and then you join your fronts, finish your armhole shaping, you join your backs, triangles, finish the armhole shaping, and then you're ready to join in the round, which is where I am at. Once you join in the round, you do have some vertical bust darts that are written into the pattern, and that's just to add a little more fabric to accommodate more tissue at the bust. And then there's an appendix if you need to add additional bust dart shaping. And so I added 3 inches of bust darts here. So that was all short rows on the front. And then you're good to begin some body increases. So there's some A-line shaping, and that's because there's minimal ease at the top in your shoulders up here. And then down near your belly and your hips, it grades out to about 2 inches of positive ease. And so I started this pattern up here on size D, and that's based on the recommended ease and based on my upper bust. I then added more bust darts for my full bust, and then for my belly, because I needed to have 2 inches of positive ease, I'm increasing from size D for the body increases up to size E. So I am redoing some of the math for the body increases. Essentially, I'm doing more body increases at a slightly quicker rate, and that will get me from size D to size E for the full bust. And then based on my math, those increases should be most of the length of the tank top, and so then that part will be done. And then I'll go back and pick up a slight I-cord around all these edges, and this will be done. I am so excited for this. It's really easy knitting at this point, and I love this colorway. The slight speckles are showing up really nicely in this fabric, and that's why I just wanted a very simple project to show it off. And so when I was working these little triangles and kind of working flat, I also was only using 1 skein of yarn, and I went down a needle size to accommodate for my purling tension being a little looser. So I used a US 2 for all my flat stitches and only used 1 skein of yarn. And then once we joined in the round, I have added in my 2nd skein of yarn, and I am now helical knitting these 2 skeins. And so I'm thinking once this little skein runs out, I may not helical knit with a new skein, even though I have another skein in stash, because I don't know if I'm gonna use all of this. I'm trying to decide. Do I just continue helical knitting? Because I don't think there's like a large difference where you can tell like where I stopped helical or like started helical knitting from knitting flat. Obviously there's some difference here, but overall I think the color is working really, really nicely. So let me know, what would you do? I just don't know if it's worth breaking into a 3rd skein if I'm not going to need it. I know I could like split this one into 2 and keep helical knitting, but I kind of don't enjoy helical knitting. It's fine, but it's not my favorite. I do have to, because I will forget to switch skeins because it's really easy to kind of keep going and forget to switch skeins where you do the slip 3 when you're helical knitting. And so I do have a like moving stitch marker here. Where did it go? Here. And so this stitch marker here is 3 light bulb markers, and so when I get to it, when I'm ready to slip my 3 stitches for helical knitting, I pick up this marker here, put it onto my needle, and then slip my 3. And that's just to help remind me, like, this is where you're switching skeins, because otherwise, and I know this, is I'll just keep knitting and then it'll be a few rounds. I'll be like, oh, I've not switched skeins or I missed it. And so that's been helpful for me. Either way, this project's not going to be one that can become like super mindless movie knitting or something, because I do have these increases on the body I'm doing every 6 rounds for the math to increase from size D to size E. So I have to keep track of that. So I can't really knit it in the dark, but it's still good for like in the house kind of projects. And yeah, I'm so happy with how the color is working. I love this V-neck. Depending on how this fits, I will definitely knit this pattern again, because I love a basic tank top and I love wearing them under things. You can see like I'm wearing a tank top today, and I like the V-neck. I think it's really pretty, and I just fell in love with this colorway, and I'm just so glad to have found a project that kind of shows off the delicate speckling in such a gorgeous project. And so I'm also kind of hoping, like, if I can just get this tank top out of 2, this would be a great project to just kind of have in my back pocket for if I'm ever shopping and find a skein that I really, really love. I can just pick up 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn and make a tank top. So yeah, I started this August 6th. It's currently August 17th, so it's been on my needles for 11 days, and I'm on the body increases. And I think what's really fun about this is, like, you knit a front triangle and then you put it on hold. You make another triangle, make another triangle, make another triangle. Okay, do the armhole increases. Okay, join in the round. Okay, do these increases, short rows. And so there's always like something that you're working toward. And so that's always fun for me, is like, oh, I just want to keep working through this part, through this part, through this part. So that's fun. So yes, this is my weekend cami. I also really love the layout of the pattern. It's written extremely well, and I will definitely be coming back to another Amy Sher pattern because I just really appreciate all the details that are in this pattern, the bust starts that are included, and how the pattern is laid out and explained. It's just been a real joy to knit so far. So I highly recommend this. And yes, that is all of the works in progress that I have been working on recently. I do want to show one more work in progress that is joining the rotation again. And this is just kind of give an update, show you where it's at, and I do plan to pull it back into my rotation here soon. I've done about 4 rounds on it since I last recorded. And so this is my High Tide Shell by Lindsay Fowler. I am knitting it in Woolstock Worsted in 3 colors. I love how this looks. So it is my dark brown here as my main color with 2 other colors as my contrasting colors. It is knit bottom up, as you can kind of see here. The chartreuse is called Golden Meadow, and then the light tan is Driftwood. I cast this on in end of April, but then kind of set it aside during the winter, and now that fall is on the horizon, I do want to pull this back out to kind of have ready. It was a little on the back burner because I was a little worried about sizing. I was kind of between a few sizes, and so as I mentioned, my bust is a 48 inch, and so the recommended ease of this pattern is 4 to 6 inches. So I had cast on the size 6. My gauge is a little off, so roughly I'm going to get about a 52.5 inch size, which is about from 48 to 52. That's about 4.5, almost 5 inches, because it's going to be 52 3/4 or so. And so I was worried, like, based on my upper bust, which is like 42 to 52, that's like 10 inches of ease. So I was really worried that at my upper chest, like, what if it's just too big, but it's the right amount of ease for my full bust and like my belly and hips. So actually the Amy Sher pattern gave me great inspiration for this. So since this is bottom up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue knitting the 52 inch size all the way through getting to, you split for the armholes. And then there's some decreases to do the armhole shaping, and then there'll be some, you know, some shaping to do the inside neckline. So once I get there, my goal is to then try to do some math to do extra decreases to decrease after the armhole divide to get a slightly smaller size for my upper chest. And so I haven't figured out the math exactly yet. I still have quite a ways to go before I get there, so I'm not going to worry about it yet. When I do get there, I'm going to add in a lifeline, and then that way I can then kind of dive into some of the math, figure out how I can do some extra decreases, because it has to keep this slip stitch mosaic pattern. So I have to keep a multiple of some sort. I think it's a multiple of 2 because it's like a slip knit kind of pattern. So I'll look and see what the size below has. I'll do some math and see what I can do. And that's kind of my goal, to hopefully get it to fit a little bit nicer. It is supposed to be like an outerwear kind of vest. They call it a shell. So it's something that you wear kind of like over long sleeves, maybe even over like a button up. And so you do want a good amount of ease, but I just don't want it to be like too loose at my shoulders. I have pretty narrow shoulders as it is, and then a large bust, so sometimes I have a little bit of like slippage as things like fall off. So that's where I just want to make sure I do some extra decreases to make sure it fits nicely at my shoulders while also being roomy at my waist. So that is my high tide shell. Like I've said, I've done a few rounds on it, but it will be coming back into rotation soon, especially since like my Tolsta Tee is almost done and it was mostly stockinette. My socks that I currently have on the needles are stockinette. My weekend cami is stockinette. So I do need to sink my teeth into something that requires a little bit more focus, has a little bit of a stitch pattern to it. I have thought briefly about maybe casting on a shawl so that I do have something that's a little different than stockinette. But we'll see how I'm feeling once I cast off my Tolsta tank. There is another garment that I'm kind of itching to start, so it's just a matter of, is 3 garments too many? Should I just focus on 2? Maybe I'll swatch for this new one to try to finish up one of these others. But I also kind of was like, can I sneak in another summer t-shirt? Because I've really been loving working on the fingering weight weekend cami. So I just have a lot of ideas going right now. So, and it's just kind of like, well, if I do a t-shirt, the t-shirt could really be a transitional piece in the fall, and then I could start working on heavier weight sweaters. So I kind of don't know what I'm doing yet, but I have a few ideas stirring, and it's really the swatching that like pauses me. Is like, I need to do some swatching so that I can do some casting on, but I need to finish what I have. And that's where I'm at. Work had been in a really, really busy season. I do finance and accounting for a nonprofit, and we were in our budgeting season, and I was kind of really driving a lot of the budgeting discussions in the sense of like communicating with a lot of other teams throughout the company. And now the budget's done, so my brain has opened up a little bit more to cast on all these things now that I have a big project done. I really want to like dive back into my making and knitting, and I need the weather to cool down so that I can wear my makes. Just why I also want to make another t-shirt. I'm thinking the Skyline tee by Tori Yu could be a nice transitional fall piece. Anyway, I think that's enough rambling for today. As you see, I have a lot of ideas going. I hope you found this video inspiring. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see some future content. I've also been working off on the side. I'm doing a Ravelry kind of how to use tips and tricks kind of series. So I've released a few videos recently, but that was very basics, like how to create a Ravelry account and how to edit your profile. But I'm really planning to dive into some of the more advanced features of Ravelry, talking about how to use your queue, how to add to stash in Ravelry, how to advanced search, a lot of different areas of the website. I really wanted to go from A all the way through the advanced features. So if there's anything you'd love to see in the Ravelry series, you can also let me know, but please check it out if you're interested. Some of the beginner videos, obviously you might already have an account or you've already set up your profile, but I'm hoping as I move into more of these advanced features, you'll find something helpful there as well. So be on the lookout for those. I hope you put a little bit of love into every stitch today. Thank you for hanging out with me. I truly appreciate you choosing to take some of your time and spending it with me. And I hope the end of summer treats you well. I hope if you are transitioning to a back to school season, that transition also treats you well. Remember to take care of yourself, and I hope to see you again in a few weeks for my next podcast episode. Until then, happy knitting, and I'll see you again very soon.